Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Helotes City Council. It's June 13th, 2019, and we're underway at 7 p.m. Starting off our agenda, we'll have the invocation. Tonight, Councilmember Massey is going to do that, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance to the American and Texas flag. So if you'd please stand for the invocation and pledges.
Dear Lord, we are grateful for your blessings. We ask that you watch over our city staff and fire and police forces. Please keep them safe from harm and productive in their work. As we deliberate during our meeting, give us wisdom to make the right decisions for our community and help us to be courteous and considerate with each other. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Okay, we had next up a short blip for Mayor's report. We had planned to have a planning and zoning workshop this weekend. However, we've canceled that workshop because the legislature, in its infinite wisdom, has come up with some new bills that will dramatically impact what cities can and cannot do when it comes to specifying different materials and other things on residential and commercial buildings. They all passed, both houses, and waiting on the governor to sign the bills, and that won't be until mid-July, so we're going to wait and see if he signs them or vetoes them or just leaves them wandering somewhere in the wild blue yonder, who knows. But we're waiting on that, so we'll reschedule that later in the year. Next up, citizens to be heard. Do we have anybody, Rick? Nobody signed up? Okay, then next up on the agenda is our consent agenda. And for those of you that aren't familiar with a meeting such as ours, consent agenda is made up of a grouping of agenda items that are the business that's figured to be fairly routine by me and the staff. So they're hopefully going to be approved in a grouping. There's only two tonight, items 4 and 5. The council does have the opportunity to ask questions. If we can answer that question or those questions fairly briefly, we will. Otherwise, they can pull the item for a full discussion later in the agenda. So I'd ask council, do you all have any questions or request to pull an item 4 or 5? Nothing? Okay, then I would look for a motion and a second to approve consent agenda items 4 and 5.
Mayor, I'd move for consent agenda items 4 and 5 for approval.
We have a motion by Meadows for approving the consent agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second from Fredericks. No discussion being required. We'll call the question. All in favor of approving consent agenda items 4 and 5, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. That takes us to our individual items for consideration. Agenda item number 6. This is discussion of and action on a request by Carlos Miranda for approval of wall signage at their new office space at 12415 Bandera Road, Suite 118. So if I can have a motion and a second to take action on this request, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we discuss and take action on item 6 as written.
Okay, we have a motion from Fredericks. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Buys. And we do have Carlos and Vicky Miranda here. If you have any questions, we'll call them to the podium. Otherwise, we're open for discussion. Paul, it's your motion, so you're up first.
No, I agree with planning and zoning. I'm okay with just moving that sign over to the new location. I mean, it's an existing sign, so I don't think there should be any heartburn about that.
Okay, Bert?
I totally agree with that.
Cynthia?
I agree.
Jim?
I agree.
Alex?
It's unanimous. I agree as well.
Okay. After a heavy discussion and no further discussion seeming to be necessary, we'll call the question. All in favor of approving item 6 of Carlos Miranda moving the existing sign down a few office spaces, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Congratulations. Item number 7, discussion of and action on a request by C5 Helotes LP for approval of a conceptual design plan and associated sign variance requests for Service First Automotive Center located at 12596 Bandera Road. For those of you that are not familiar with that address, that's at the corner of Hausman and Bandera, right next door to the existing Compass Bank. So if I can have a motion and a second, we'll get into discussion and action on this item.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we discuss, take action on 7.
We have a
second
motion
it.
from Byes. Who
I'll second it.
And Blue seconded it. So Bert, you're up.
Okay, I recommend approval of request by the C5 Helotes for their conceptual design plan with P and Z's recommendation for these conditions. I guess we probably read them, all of us have read them all. Do I need to read them? There's,
I don't think so.
There's 4.
Did y'all read the conditions? Yeah.
yeah,
we're okay.
with the stipulation that they follow the 4 conditions that P and Z recommended.
Okay. Alex?
I concur. I think that planning and zoning did a thorough job of asking a lot of questions. The one issue I think was kind of a little bit left unresolved was staff's recommendation on the location of the dog park, and I just wanted to bring that up. The location being having an enclosed area right up next to a major road obviously can be a concern. I'm kind of torn on this one simply because I don't know where else they would put it. And the hope is that obviously if they're complying with city ordinance, everybody will have their dog on a leash, and there really isn't anywhere else on there. So I know that it was something that was brought up, and I'd like to hear my fellow council members' position on that just before making that final. But I completely concur with planning and zoning's recommendations with regard to the lighting, the signage, et cetera. Thank you.
Okay, and you're talking about their stipulations on the signage as shown in the variance request?
Yes, and
Okay. And we had recommended to them to move that dog park back here in the back somewhere. They have plenty of room for it, and just to get it away from that major highway right away. Jim, anything?
The only thing I have, I just would like to applaud what the planning commission said and find out if there's any way we can make this a requirement. The address on the monument signs, as the more and more strip centers we get, the harder it is to determine between center A, B, or C. If you actually have the street address there, it makes a big difference as far as, to me, to finding places. I know where you're going down, basically down the frontage road along 10 or 410, it's almost impossible to decide which center or which buildings you're in and which suite you're trying to go to is a whole different matter. But I just think that's a positive, so I concur with their recommendation.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, it is a requirement of our code, which is why and since it wasn't on their application, is why planning and zoning added it as a
Right.
stipulation.
Yeah. That it?
That's it.
Cynthia?
I'm a little confused about what a dog park is doing at an auto service center.
I was too, and we sent some comments to them, but it's still there. I'm assuming that people come with their dogs when they drop their cars off. I have no clue.
Well, I think, I'd like to find out. I don't see a picture of what
don't
this
see it
dog
either.
park is going to look like. And I'm not sure
Yeah.
that this
Are you-
is something that we,
Go ahead and get up there and tell us who you are and
Evening, Mayor,
and
ladies
answer
and
those
gentlemen of the
questions.
council. I'm James Poole. I represent the developer on this project, the proposed Service First Automotive at the corner of Bandera and Hausman Road. My office location is 4336 Marsh Ridge Road, Carrollton, Texas. So I'm more than happy to answer try to answer any questions you may have.
so what is this dog park thing all about? How big is it? What does it look like?
I believe it's like 12 by 16. It's a small fenced-in enclosure with a couple of benches for customers to use while they're waiting on their cars to be worked on if they happen to bring their pet with them.
What kind of fencing is this?
It's wrought iron, I believe. There should be a detail within our.
You have that picture somewhere? I have it on my desk, and I forgot to bring it up here.
I thought there was some kind of fencing.
It's in the packet.
Yeah, last I saw it, it's in there, but
It's in the packet.
it's a wrought iron, kind of like what's around
I'm pulling it up.
Kuntz Elementary School on Leslie Road, you know that
I
wrought
see.
iron?
And where exactly is it going to be on this acreage? Is
Yeah,
it
that-
going to be on the Compass Park side or the Compass Bank side?
No, it'll be out in front of
It's
our
right here
location.
on this sheet, shown right there to the left of the driveway going into Compass Bank.
Here's the dog park right here.
And there is plenty
Right
of...
in front of, on Bandera Road?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right next to the right-of-way. We had recommended to them to put it back here in the back.
Look, I don't even want this thing here. I think that it's the wrong usage for, I mean, I understand that it's something that we have to allow because it's in our thing. But it's bad enough that this is here. It's nice looking, I have to say, for what it is. It's gonna cause a lot more traffic, cars in and out. Now we have to look at cars, not just in front of us, but parked over here in this services area. It's a terrible location for this, but fine, it's gonna be there. But I don't have to look at dogs too. I mean, a dog kennel, okay? I'm very much against putting this dog park in the front on either the Bandera or the Hausman. If you wanna put it somewhere, put it in the back or put it by where the Compass Bank is so people can't see it that are driving by. That's all we need, a bunch of dogs barking at us as we're parked there trying to go. Okay, I'm sorry.
Can you enlarge that part of it, Rick? The wrought iron fence and then the plan of it over there on the left side, just enlarge it a little bit. Anything else, Cynthia?
No, that's it for now.
Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Seeing all this signage is fairly loud. I mean, I know we've had signage with KFC and it was loud and we allowed that. But I think all this signage is very busy for this. And I think the red brick, there's a lot of red brick there, which is not really what we typically would prefer from these buildings. And
Excuse me just a second. Would you get that color board and show it to them? Okay, that's basically the materials you're looking at. No, it's all right.
This is the red brick we're using all throughout the building?
Evidently.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of out of the norm for what we typically would ask on a development like this. And that's a lot of signage that I think is unnecessary. I think the directional signage is also unnecessary. Did they eliminate their directional signage, P and Z?
Yes.
No.
They eliminated the directional signage?
No, they left that there, as I recall.
It's still gonna be there.
The directional signage is allowed by code.
Yeah.
So
It's the number of the other signs
the
on the
number
walls.
of the wall signs. So what P and Z recommended was that it limit to sign A and sign B. Sorry. So it's sign A and sign B, which is the front facing Bandera Road, and the front or side facing Hausman Road.
So what are we doing on Hausman?
I'm sorry, let me get my stuff.
Just
together.
A is how P and Z provote.
So nothing over the base? We're not gonna put anything
So
over the base?
that's what we asked for a variance for, and P and Z's recommendation was to only allow sign B as part of the variance.
And then sign C. So basically A, B, and C.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So basically what you're looking at, what P and Z is recommending is on the tower portion of the building that fronts both Hausman Road and Bandera Road, that sign A be allowed, which is the Service First Automotive Center's major sign above the tower. Sign B, which is the Express Lube Center along Bandera Road. And signs C, which are the numbers that are to the rear of the structure, that are above the doors. Does that make sense?
And is that compliant? Would that make it, bring it into compliance?
No, there are still some size issues. The signage that's on the tower component is compliant with code. The fronting Bandera Road, the Express Lube Center, when you add that in addition to the size of the tower sign, it's too many square feet, and it's too many signs. Basically, you're supposed to have one sign per street. And then to the rear, the numbers above at that point, once you have two signs on the building, you're maxed out. So they're asking, so P and Z's recommendation would still include a variance request,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
We're still gonna keep
I'm
the
sorry.
electrical, AC, alignment, brakes, and tune-up above the doors.
P and Z would only allow those three signs that I'm talking about,
Okay.
not allow anything else.
So this new one that's on our dais is still,
The new one that's on the dais is only there because before they didn't have Bandera Road and Hausman Road on there, they just had north, south, east, and west, so they were clarifying
okay,
which way the building was facing.
okay, okay.
So there'll be less signs than are shown here. Just as a comment, when I saw the dog run and sent some remarks back to wherever it came from, if you guys do decide to allow it, and again, we recommended moving it to the back, not against the right-of-way on Bandera Road, but just about every dog park I've seen like this, the people that, once they have their dog in there, they're going to let it off the leash, even though it's fairly small, and just let it run around and do its thing. I had recommended to them to indicate a sally port type deal, where you'd have the outside gate and then a chute going in with a gate on the other end of that, so that people opening the gate to let their dog go in won't at the same time let another dog out. That way you have two gates, and it would at least eliminate some of the potential for dogs to be running loose and running out on the Bandera Road with their owners chasing them. So I think it's a very dangerous situation for public safety to allow something like that facility to be right there on Bandera Road, close to that corner of Hausman and Bandera. And those were my comments. So, Bert, any follow-up on?
Well, that was going to be my next question. It's within the right-of-way, but shouldn't there be a setback for it? Can it be right on the edge of the right-of-way like that?
Something like that, typically, yeah.
And like Councilmember Massey said, why would anybody want to sit next to Bandera Road? Does it have a roof on it?
It's not indicated to have any kind of
does not.
shade.
Why are you, I don't understand that. I mean, I wouldn't want to sit there with my dog watching cars go by, but hey, it's up to you guys. You want to put it there. I don't know if we can stop it or not.
Extremely
I would
hot.
recommend,
I believe you,
It's going to be very hot, too, especially if it doesn't have a cover.
yeah. And there's a lot of trees back in the back, and they own
gonna
all
get
that
much
property.
use. Okay. I would recommend that you move that thing, but hey, I guess you don't have any place to put it.
Yeah, they do. There's plenty of room back in the back.
Plenty of room.
They own that whole corner to the post office.
Do we have the authority to do that?
Of course we do.
I would think so, yeah, sure.
Okay, I'd like to amend my motion that they find another location other than where it is right now for that dog park.
Or
and
not,
then
not allow it.
Or not allow it, yes.
Okay. So that's an amended.
Which one? I know what I'm gonna second.
If I can interject.
I don't know how to
think
tell them exactly where to put it.
Rick's antsy down anywhere in the back here.
I'm not antsy, I just want to make sure that we're clear that
Okay,
when you say anywhere else but what it is, they could then put it on Hausman Road frontage,
Okay.
so I think you
I
need to be
be more, okay, to
more
the,
specific.
I sent you my suggestions, which was on the site plan. If you look at the site plan, PSP 10 that shows the dog park, you have on the back where the dumpsters are, you have a space to either side of those dumpsters that's a little offset, or on that back parking lot where it says Service Bay Signage E, anywhere along there, and provide access from the parking lot. All of that's grass and trees back there, so that would be, if they're going to have it, that would be a more ideal location. That way, it's not on the right-of-way of Hausman, and it's not on the right-of-way of Bandera Road. But I would also require that second gate.
that's what I was going to amend my motion to say also.
Okay.
So where was the location again? Do we understand that?
back.
Yes.
Either side of here or behind the parking lot, just
Okay.
somewhere away from Hausman and away from Bandera Road.
With the second gate?
Yes,
Okay, yes.
that would be my recommendation.
That's what I'm going to amend my motion
So
to.
that's, you're amending the motion to go with P and Z's recommendations, plus not allow the dog park on Bandera Road. If they're gonna have it in the back somewhere?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
One of those three
As a-
locations that you suggested. there.
Okay,
Okay.
And I concur on my second with that addition.
okay. Do you have any follow-up, Alex?
No, sir, that's why I brought it up, because it concerned me that they did not. Thank you.
Okay, Jim?
Mayor, may I ask the applicant a question?
Sure.
How many, on your existing locations, do you have a lot of dogs coming to your locations with?
I wouldn't know. I'm not involved in the operations. I'm not there on a day-to-day basis, so I don't know the volume
One
of.
of your locations?
I have,
Okay.
yes. I'm a customer, but I have not ever brought my dog to the site, so,
All right.
Do the other locations have, excuse me, Jim, do the other locations have dog parks?
yes.
Do they?
Yeah. Not every one of them, but some of them do.
Okay.
My comment, or two, I concur with the reason to move it, but the size of this dog park, it's nothing more than a place to relieve your dog. And so if it's right up by the right-of-way, you're also going to have, there's really no dog park for that size of a place. So they can get out and maybe run around, but that's all you're going to get out of that. It's not a dog run or a dog park like the Palms has or something where it's a play area. So I would concur with the idea of moving it away from the right-of-way.
Yeah, and another thought up there, people are gonna be taking their dogs on the leash in the right-of-way between the property line and the highway and letting their dogs go up and down that ditch and
Well,
do
that
it.
was my problem if we disallowed it totally, is that they'd be using the ditch and the right-of-way to relieve their dog, if they are indeed coming to the
Right.
area. So,
Right. Anything else?
Nope.
Cynthia?
Is
The-
there no way to get, is there an access to the Compass Bank parking from this?
Yes, there's cross-access between the
'Cause
sites.
I can't see where
Yeah,
it would be.
that's right here on PSP 1.0. This is the Compass Bank driveway. So they'll share that driveway on Bandera Road.
I can't.
This PSP 1.0, you'll see Compass, it says existing bank in that driveway.
Oh,
And so they'll come in the Compass Bank approach, take a left in that front parking lot that's there now, and that's how they'll gain access, and they'll go down the driveway next to Compass Bank to go in the back.
yeah, and again, I think, not to belabor the issue, but that's a very dangerous place for that dog park, for people as well, because cars are gonna be going back and forth through there.
Yep.
And it's just a very bad location. So, like I said,
We sent all those comments to them, but they ignored them.
yeah, well, they better not ignore them, because, I'll go rip the thing down myself if I have to.
If I
She
may
will too.
expand on the thought process behind, you mind listening for half a second?
I couldn't hear you.
I said if you don't mind, I'd expand on the reasoning for the location of the dog park, and
Sure.
maybe that help alleviate some of the issues. So the reasoning is to put it in the front. The customers typically aren't driving their cars in the back, so they wanted easy access for their customers. They pull in the front part, they can walk in and out of the lobby. It's easy access. The alternative location, which has been discussed, we thought that being in front of the store was much more pleasant than being next to a dumpster for the customers, and we didn't want customer foot traffic through the back area where the employees are pulling cars in and out. So that was the thought process behind it. I understand the concerns of dogs being near the major right-of-way, definitely, but hopefully they're all on leashes.
They don't necessarily have to be to either side of the dumpster, although since there's no food, as in a restaurant, you shouldn't have a bunch of foul odors back there. It's just car parts and stuff like that. Or just put it behind there. But it'll give people a chance to get some exercise, walking their dogs back to the dog park. It's my way of looking at it.
Yeah, no, that's.
Paul, anything?
No.
Okay, anything else from anybody? Okay, so the motion is amended to not only include all of the recommendations proposed by planning and zoning, but also to prohibit the dog run, dog park to be up front along Bandera Road or along Hausman Road. But if we're going to do it, place it back to either side of the dumpster or behind the parking lot in that area. And before they would do that, they would have to submit that to the city for another look. Is that fair enough?
Yes, sir.
So that's the amended motion. No other discussion being required. We'll call the question. All in favor of approving the Service First Automotive Center with the stipulations of the dog park being moved and the planning and zoning recommendations, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no.
No.
You're no? No. We have one no, and that's Fredericks. Thanks a bunch. Okay, next up, we have our Public Works Supervisor, Josh Mayer, and he's going to do a presentation on our street maintenance project for this year. And we'll do that, and then when we get into the agenda item, we'll take a motion and a second for discussion and action on the presentation and the project.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for allowing me to be here tonight to present our 2019 City of Helotes Street Maintenance Plan. It's going to be very similar to the work that you've seen us, that we did last year throughout the city. We're just going to be completing a lot of the areas that we kind of started, different neighborhoods.
Use the other arrow.
I think I'm using
That's what he always tells me too when I do that.
Okay, hold on. I think he set me up again.
Just use the other arrow than what you're pressing.
This is flawless work being done here. Okay, one more time.
You got
Okay,
it?
so, are we going through these? I thought this is the one we're going through. So real quick, we're just gonna kind of go over some of our maintenance activities. Is this the right slideshow?
This is the
Yeah.
right slide.
Okay, very
Yeah,
good.
just read it.
I don't know, I saw 3 of them, so I was making sure it was the right one. Okay. So real quick, one of our primary activities we do is called a one-course surface treatment. Y'all have seen this where we go through and we put the graphite trap rock on top of a polymer and add a new wearing surface to the street, putting that binder down on the road and giving us that new aggregate and extending the life of the pavement. According to TxDOT, they recommend that this activity has a lifespan of about 6 to 8 years, and it looks like we're on par for that course. The areas where we're going to be doing this is Antonio Drive and Marion Hollow, and then we'll be doing the remainder of the streets that we did not do last fiscal year up in Helotes Park Estates, including the one street that Councilman Fredericks is most concerned about. The other thing that we do is once we do the one-course surface treatment, we've started the process of putting down what's known as a mastic, in particular a product called Onyx. It's a surface treatment that adds to the frictional characteristics. It increases the skid rating while also locking down that aggregate and preventing moisture from penetrating through the top of the new one course. It's a real good process. It normally opens the traffic in about an hour, extends the life of the road 3 to 5 years, and it has a UV resistant barrier in it, so it helps keep the polymer that's holding the rock down fresher longer because it's not getting beat up by the sun. We're doing this on every street that we're going to do one course on this year, so once again, Antonio, Marion Hollow, and anything up in Helotes Park Estates. Typically what we're doing now is if we're one coursing, we're also masticing on top of it because it gives you a nice, much cleaner job and longer lasting.
I'll interject. Antonio Drive is not included on this
yeah, that's correct.
surface treatment because we are wanting to use a different surface treatment, so he'll talk about that shortly.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's correct. Other process we're doing on Gom, Braun, and Shanefield is the crack routing and sealing. This is the process where we go through and the larger cracks, we'll route them out, clean them out, get nice straight edges in there, and add that crack seal material in there to prevent water from penetrating through the top of the surface. And then the smaller cracks don't get rounded, but they still get sealed, and any patchwork we do out there, we seal it out. So if you ever seen the black squiggly lines down the road, this is the process we'll be doing there on Gom, Braun, and Shanefield. Mill and overlay, this is the most extensive work. This is almost a complete reconstruction from base up. This is where we'll go in and mill out all the existing old asphalt because it's reached its life expectancy. It's no longer feasible to do a maintenance activity to it based upon the degradation that we're seeing out there. It's the exact same process we did up in front of BMC Millwork up at the top of Leslie Road and Signal Hill. So we're doing this on Iron Horse Way between FM 1560 and its intersection with Antonio. If any of y'all have driven that lately, the road is really degraded. It has a lot of slumping in there and cracking. And it's just past the point to where we don't feel there's a maintenance activity we can do to it to prolong its life anymore. This is this next process we'll talk about is HA5. It's considered a high-density mineral bond. Basically, it's a upgraded version of a mastic. It would be the easiest way I could describe it to you. But this product is unique because it's one of the few products that comes with a 5-year warranty once they put it down on the road. Most products that you put on the road, they'll give you a 1-year service warranty or something like that. These guys will come out here and touch anything up within 5 years of it that wasn't caused by, a trash truck or machinery digging it up or something. But any premature failures, they'll come out and take care of that stuff. It's going to do this same process as the mastic on the one course, except we're going to utilize this particular treatment on older oxidized pavement. We found that some of the other mastics we were using were not adhering to the pavement quite as well as we'd like it to. So we've kind of stepped it up a notch and went from just that typical mastic to this high-density mineral bond. We'll be using this in Hunter's Ridge, the entire neighborhood, and then also on Antonio. The thought process behind using it on Antonio is we would like to see how it performs on a new one-course surface treatment, and we want to see how it performs on a asphalt road. We have done extensive research on this product, even traveling to other cities that have put this product down. We've seen applications that were down for 10 years that still look really fresh. We had great recommendations from the Texas Transportation Institute up at Texas A&M on this product. So it's been a process trying to get some of this down on our streets, and this will be the first year where we actually get to install some.
Hey, Josh, excuse me, can I ask?
Yes, sir.
Are you talking about all of Antonio Drive, the whole?
The whole street, well, excluding the Old Town portion, so where the floodgates are at going in Old Town, we'll stop there, but basically from there back to FM 1560. We'll be resurfacing the whole street.
Really?
And then coming back with this on top of it.
Wow. Is that stuff we went to Austin and looked at?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Is this significantly more expensive?
It is significantly more expensive. It's not quite double, but we're,
Almost double.
yeah, the prices we have bidded in the past, the traditional mastic, we've been getting it for about 21 cents a square foot. This is costing us about 32 cents a square foot. So it is significantly more when you're thinking about a whole bunch of square feet, but it's got double the life expectancy. It's a 5-year warranty. It's a whole different product. It's a little beefier. It has more fine aggregate in it, and it has a higher skid rating according to the studies that I've seen.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
It's different than what was put on Circle A and Rocky and all the other streets in Helotes Park Estates. Because
Yes.
I remember a lot of people complained that there was still a lot of gravel and it took a long time for the road to smooth down. And it sounds like this one is not going to have that issue.
It's a different mastic, but it's still going down on top of the same process. So if there will still be loose aggregate, there will still be a cleanliness needed to do when we do the one course, but and really all we can tell you is the studies and the examples we've seen show it lasting longer. That's kind of what you're getting for the price is longer lasting product.
Well, most of the loose gravel was on the first two streets we did, Bar X and Circle A, because we didn't do the mastic overlay over the aggregate when it's put down. All the rest of them, I think it pretty well tied down all the loose aggregate, as far as I'm aware.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So 2 years ago, we did one course on Circle A and Bar X, and we did not do any mastic. We got feedback from our residents that lived up there
Right.
that didn't like it, so we went out and found a affordable alternative that we were hoping would achieve the goal of giving us a new wearing surface, but also preventing that loose aggregate. And what we did on, say, your street and the rest of the streets up there last year and the streets over in Ranch Acres, were received quite well. So we really didn't get any complaints on loose aggregate last year.
Yeah,
And it'll be the same product, the Onyx,
okay.
that was used, so it'll all tie together.
I still think there's some confusion about why HA5 is being used in Hunter's Ridge rather than HA5 being used on streets.
That's what I was
in
gonna
Hunter Park
recommend.
Estates, and so I'd like you to go through that,
Yeah.
because one, they're two totally different. One's asphalt, one's chip seal.
Right.
Yeah, so we use a product called Onyx on everything last year. Any new one course and any oxidized asphalt road that was ready for a preventive maintenance technique. So we use a singular product. That product didn't perform as well as we would want it to perform on oxidized, smooth surface, typically old asphalt surfaces. It needed a more coarse surface to stick to. So when we put it down on top of a one course, it's performing phenomenal. It's great. But when we put it down on a slick asphalt road that had some oxidation weathering on it, it showed premature loss. So we had got a lot of rock shine within a couple of weeks of putting it down, and we've gotten a lot of product loss over the years. Over the years since last year. So we looked at something that was a little more beefier, hoping that it would help us with the older asphalt roads.
And the two streets, we put it on asphalt, the Onyx on asphalt. Just tell them about those two streets and why you're unhappy.
So we put it down on Leslie Road, the entire section of Leslie Road, including on top of the new asphalt in the mill and overlay. And then we put it on our entire spans of Scenic Loop. And it was a real great test segment for us. We viewed it as a test segment when we did it. Scenic Loop, the first half of it or so to that first bridge is actually asphalt. And then once you get to that bridge, it turns into a one course. They put a one course on top of that road some years back. And it was really interesting to see the performance from asphalt to the one course. And then the same thing on Leslie Road, the new section up at the top of the hill by BMC and Millwork. We onyx that, and we onyx the older asphalt road between the intersection and Bandera Road. And over the year, been checking on it regularly to see how it's lasting and how it's holding up. And like I was saying, just those smoother, oxidized, slick surfaces, that particular mastic wasn't doing what we wanted it to do. So we went out and looked for some new technology to see what it does.
So, bottom line is, in Helotes Park Estates, the vast majority, if not all of those streets other than Monarch, are chip seal. They've always been chip seal. Onyx works well on those, it sticks to it, and it stays black. On asphalt, like Scenic Loop Road, Onyx does not perform well in our opinion, and so that's why we're proposing on asphalt streets to go with HA5, because it is a superior product than Onyx. And the only streets, the only neighborhoods that we have that are public streets, actually the only one is Hunter's Ridge, correct? That has asphalt throughout.
Iron Horse,
And Iron Horse, that's correct. But we're not doing anything in Iron Horse this year, so,
and then also Gom, Shanefield, and Broughton, but
yeah. But residential,
residential.
besides Iron Horse, that's the only other neighborhood that has asphalt.
Yes,
So
sir.
it makes sense to use HA5 in Hunter's Ridge.
One thing that, in the years that we've been doing this and researching this and speaking to other cities and contractors and taking in all this information, the first thing to tell you is it's never a one-size-fits-all. So what you're doing to maintain a chip seal road, if you're doing the same thing to maintain an asphalt road, you probably are lacking in one or the other. So as we extend this process and the street maintenance continues, eventually we'll get it down to standard operating procedure for each one of these roads based upon their conditions. And it'll take a lot of subjectivity out of it.
Mayor, may I ask a quick
Kinda go.
question? about
Sure.
that? I'm confused by some of the we's. Are we buying bulk materials and doing all the installation, or is everything third party?
95% of, actually, all of this plan will be third-party. We do some in-house work, some light level up, pothole repairs, things like that, in prep for the contractors to come in, but everything in this presentation is being done by contracted labor.
I just have a comment later on then about the third parties.
Okay.
An experience we had in Los Reyes.
And just mention the allowance. Maybe you'll do that here for the level up like we did last year. and what's included in Level Up, the type of work.
Sure. So, on the summer here, these are the totals, these estimates, the cost estimates here are estimates based upon what we've been getting bids for the past couple of years. I keep that updated in our cartograph system that we use to manage this asset, so it should be relatively close. Down at the bottom, the mayor's referring to these 500 tons of Level Up. Last year, if you recall, Stagecoach Lane had a real poor ride quality, and we went through and did a thin coat on it. We used that Level Up tonnage for that. And then,
Define level up.
so Level Up is basically taking bad sections of the road out, such as alligating or potholes, and getting it level with the rest of the surface. Or we'll use it for utility cuts that have sunk over time. It's really to improve the ride quality, so when we put that one course on top of it, it's going down on a nice, solid, smooth surface. And then it also becomes the structure. When we do these maintenance on these roads, we try to maintain from the bottom up, so we don't want to put down a new surface on top of something that's already degraded. We want to get the bad parts out and
And
keep it.
the material that we're using for level up is asphalt.
Yes, it's typical type D asphalt that you can get from Vulcan Materials here. And the 500 tons, we use that number because last year, that's the number we used, and it was a pretty close estimate. And we probably have less Level Up to do this year than last year, so it should be pretty good. And the bottom number is our total cost estimates, which is down slightly from last year's cost estimate, and that's simply due to majority of our infrastructure has been touched in the last 4 years. In fact, after this 2019, we would have touched every street in Helotes at least once in the last 4 years.
And just touch briefly on Diamond K and what's happening over there, and that's not part of this project.
So we've included Diamond K in the street maintenance plan every year for the last 3 years, but there's been the Bear County Flood Project. That's the never-ending Bear County Flood Project where we're planning on ripping out the culverts and repaving the road, so we didn't want to do double work. So unfortunately, it was a bad road. We just never got to the point of repairing it. But if you've driven down there lately, you've known that Bear County has finally installed the new culverts. They've backfilled and they've done a lot of concrete work, so hopefully they keep on pace. That road will be getting paved this year, but by Bear County's contractor. And then if there is a little section in there that we need to do some work on, that's not inside their scope of work, we'll take care of that. The cost should be,
And we've included Diamond K as an additive
An
alternate.
alternate? I couldn't remember if we had or not.
It's in there.
Is Diamond K open yet?
No.
No.
It's still closed?
yes, sir. It's getting close, though.
And
That's what they've been saying.
the intent was to, like Rick said, make it an alternate or an add-on, and that way, if Bear County finishes while the contractor's still doing this work, then we have the option of adding Diamond K, whatever we need to do into the project. But Bear County, hopefully they'll do the whole thing because they're really tearing it up.
Yeah.
Anything else, Josh?
That's it. I believe that's the
Okay.
last slide.
Be available for questions, because what we're going to do now is get a motion and a second for any further discussion and then action to approve your presentation and the project and the letting of the plans, or the work is already out for bid. And so your action would be to approve the project in its entirety for the total estimated cost of $622,000, which is less than what we did last year. And this will finish up just about every street in the city. There'll be a couple of out-of-the-way streets that might not be touched this year, but we're going to play that by ear. And we included those as alternates too, Mountain View and Orange Tower, right?
Yeah, the only streets that we would not have touched would have been Mountain View and
Old
Orange
Scenic
Tower.
Loop.
And
Sorry.
Old Scenic Loop.
Yeah.
Old Scenic Loop we're doing in-house. We've agreed to do that in-house, but Mountain View and Orange Tower are included as additive alternates.
Right.
There's only a handful of lots that front those two streets, so.
Okay. Okay, so I'll take a motion in a second.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we discuss and take action on, which one's this, 7?
8.
8.
8.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion from Buys and a second from Blue. Bert, you're first up.
I think it's a great project, and once again, Josh, I've said this to you before, thank you very much for bringing up the quarter-cent sales tax, street maintenance tax. Without you doing that, we wouldn't be able to do this. That's all I have, Mayor.
Alex?
I concur completely, especially on that last point. With this,
Okay.
that sales tax allows us to do these things which we
Oh,
would
yeah.
otherwise not be able to.
Yeah. Jim?
Just a couple of quickies. One, y'all have vastly greater experience in this, but in Los Reyes Canyons, we went through a similar process, and we found two problems with the third-party contractors. One, they didn't bring out sufficient barricades, and so by the time you ended up at the end of a street, you had ribbons delineating between the sides of traffic, and it was a safety factor that we really ran into. So that making sure they have sufficient barricades is something that we really ran into a problem there. And the other one, with social media becoming such a bigger issue, the squiggly lines became a problem where everybody was online saying, is this all you're going to do? Is this, you're tearing up our streets, they're going to look terrible, they look worse than San Antonio. Giving some PR in any of our publications about this is a process that takes a certain amount of time, and be patient with that, I think might be in order, so,
Gotta love social media.
I know.
No, we're really stressing, again, we learned a little bit from traffic control last year. We're going to address some of the deficiencies last year and try and get it right this year. Although it was very good last year, but there were room to improve it.
Well, we just had several streets where they had barricade, they ran out, and they had a rope with little
Yeah.
ties on it, saying this is how you keep the traffic separated, so it wasn't good.
Okay. Cynthia, anything?
No, I don't have anything.
Paul?
No, thanks, appreciate
Good.
it, Josh.
Okay, no other discussion? Then we'll go to the question, and a yes vote will be to approve the project in its entirety as it was presented, and that'll be the 2019 Helotes Street Maintenance Plan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries, and we'll let you know as we proceed through and get the bids, how we do. Okay, number 9 is a discussion and direction item. There's no action required. It's a discussion of and direction on amendments to the Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 18, Buildings and Building Regulations, Section 18-2, Building Permits, 18-3, Certificates of Occupancy for Residential Structures, and several other little sections there. So we'll just get right into discussion since there's no motion or second and no action required. And we'll start off with Jim.
Thank you. It's near and dear to my heart, and I'm glad to see it happening, and thanks to staff. And we have a particular issues in Los Reyes Canyons with permits being expired. I think our record is we have one house that's been under construction for 3 years without completion, and now they're finally getting a driveway in. It becomes an eyesore, it becomes a problem for the community. I'm fully supportive of the idea of putting teeth in our clauses that say you can build a house and get it completed and then have an actual certificate of occupancy rather than it being the ongoing, never-ending process. The other point I would make is that I was in the home building business for many years. A tract home can be built, well, it can be built in 1 day, but can be built typically in 57 days. A custom home should take no more than 150 to 180 days, and at the worst, 270, even under the most difficult conditions. And to allow people to go on indefinitely for 1, 2, 3 years, I think it just becomes a potential problem for our community. So I'm totally supportive of, and we'll be continuing to ask you all to support on these issues.
Cynthia?
Yeah, what would prevent, what is it that makes somebody want to continue building and working on a house for 3 years? I mean, where are they living while this is happening?
Well, there's several. If you don't mind me commenting directly, Mayor.
No, go ahead.
One, they're building out of their hip pocket. They have no loan, and so they're doing it as cash flow allows. 2, we've had an instance, or 1 or more, where they actually were in the business and actually were having sub-trades come in on the weekends. They were doing other projects during the week. And 3, just, they were in no hurry. They kept having changes, or for whatever reason, But those are the three specific instances. Why anybody would want to go through that mess for 1, 2, or 3 years, I have no idea. But that's the excuses that we've been given.
Well, and oftentimes they just hire a builder that should be doing something else for a living because they know nothing about building. And they're
And
fairly
in fairness,
incompetent.
in
It
a few
happens.
cases, they've had a builder go belly up, and they've had to start over with somebody else. But even given that, you can get it done in 9 months' time.
Bad weather and everything included, because did it for many years myself.
Okay, okay, I understand.
And this is just to put a little teeth in it, because right now our ordinance only allows us to do one 90-day extension, and there's no fee involved. There's no incentive to complete it, and so they just keep going after that 90-day extension. Here, they're actually going to have to get multiple extensions and pay dearly for each one.
Very good, okay,
There's an incentive.
I got you.
And the other new thing is, we haven't been requiring certificates of occupancy, and we're adding that also, because that's just more of a safety inspection as well as a building code inspection. And that way, people won't be able to move in as they do now without final inspections, because they have to have that certificate of occupancy. Because what we're running into is a lot of houses completed, people moving in, and they never had a final, because it just wasn't called in and we didn't catch it.
Or they still have a temporary meter on their house.
Yeah.
And they're plugged
Right.
into a socket down the street, and that's their power to their house.
Well, they
basically.
actually, on the one we have now, what's it called, Rick?
Which one?
The little temporary electric thing, not the temporary, but the other one.
That's the temporary on permanent set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would eliminate,
So the electric is there. They
Right.
can move the people in and never call that final. And so that's what this certificate of occupancy will do. It will replace that one that allows the meter loop to go in.
Huh, okay.
Paul?
The only thing, the couple things that I had is, and some of it was addressed, because I would say, well, what about a resident that's building their own house? But I guess that kind of gets him on the hook to complete it.
Sure.
But, one of the, so what are the consequences if, I know they have to come to us before the permit expires. What happens if they come after the permit expires? I didn't see here if they let it lapse, do they have to get a whole new permit and pay the 100%
They
again?
just get the extension, but we're improving our way of tracking these things to where we should be able to give them a notice 30 days in advance of the expiration of their permit or their extension, and let them know they need to come in and file a request.
And is it said, it talks here about the access controlled gate systems? Is that something that's new?
no,
That's existing?
that was
and-
already in code.
Okay, okay. I thought that was read, it looked new.
It-
Okay,
It's underlined, but that's because when council adopted that provision, we only put it in the International Building Code section. And actually, residential structures are under the International Residential Code. And so that's one of the cleanup things. We didn't do it correctly, honestly, the first time. And so now I'm making sure it's in both sections.
okay. That's all I had.
Okay. Bert?
Who is policing this? Is this Dustin?
Policing-
Who is the department's director?
That's Development Services.
Yeah, Ernest.
But how do do you have anybody out in the field checking to see if, I mean, you have to have somebody out in the weeds checking this stuff, don't you?
Checking what? Permit expirations?
Yeah, or checking when somebody could be, huh?
That can be done in-house.
All of
in
that's
the
done
office.
electronically now through our.
Well, you remember that one house we went to that had never been inspected or anything? The only way we found out about that was the owner called us.
And that's because we weren't tracking building expiration dates. The
Now,
process.
now we are.
Oh, okay.
Process right now is every month, the first of every month, I pull a report and see which
You
buildings.
pulled the report or
Yeah.
Ernest
Well,
and
we do
Belinda?
it collectively.
Oh,
And then we're proactively mailing letters and balance dues and statements and things like that for each one of these building permits
Oh, so-
that are expired.
okay. So you're tightening the
Yeah.
belt. Oh, the city is, okay.
Well, and we're also bringing in more revenue because there was a lot of revenue that should have been paid that wasn't. And so, the thing that we can, is particularly track home builders, is that if they aren't paying their fees, we're just not issuing any additional permits until they,
And that's typically for re-inspections, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of these fees are related to re-inspections.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I know we can't do this because we can't issue building permits for the ETJ, so they can build out in the ETJ and take 10 years to build a house.
Oh, yeah?
That's our great legislature for you. Anyway, that's all I had.
Alex?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know this issue came up a while back on that house. I guess it was up on Rafter S, and that's kind of when we started putting in the idea of having an extension. But, and I think this is great. We kind of missed that when we went through that first process, because we talked a lot about it here. You know, how long does it take to build a house? We talked about the $1 million+ houses and how much they might take a lot longer to build because of the size and the scope. But I guess my question really is, yeah, they're gonna pay an extra fee to get an extension. What if they don't come back for an extension? What if the house just sits in a partial state for a long, long time? What remedy do we have there?
Municipal court. We would issue a citation at that point, and they would be called in.
Yeah, because the assumption is for these fees that they're still doing construction and they're still working towards that certificate of occupancy. But I could see how somebody, and I've seen these before, you see these for sale houses out there. It's like, it's sort of like a shell of a building. It's been under construction for 2 years. The people moved and now it's, you know, they're having a really good sale on it, but it's kind of it's a McMansion kind of thing, but there's nothing in it. And nobody wants to buy a house that's gonna take another, you know, X amount of dollars, and so it sits for a long time as an eyesore. So you're saying we could go to municipal court and do what?
We would issue a citation over the counter, and so that would be processed through municipal court, sent to the property owner of record, and they would be required to come in and go through the prosecutor and go through the judge. And at that point, there would be some sort of negotiated settlement, or the judge would make a determination how to proceed.
Okay, so it's up to the.
And sometimes if a builder goes belly up or abandons a job, the lender is going to foreclose on that property or take it over and try and sell it. That happened up in Iron Horse Canyon with a house on, what was that street, Panther Valley?
Valley.
Yeah, where an investor came in, an individual bought the house and finished it, and then turned it around and sold it. And it was a mess, but we finally got it done. So we're not saying that this is going to be a cure-all for 100% of everything. Something could come up, we'll just have to tackle that, but this is a very good first step.
Good step.
In
I agree.
trying to solve it.
That's all, thank you.
That's our goal. Jim?
No, I applaud the efforts. I think they're long ways along the way. I would point out for a tract home, which the plans are repeated over and over again, 57 to 75 days is the maximum time that you're going to be building that house. So it won't impact any of the tract-type subdivisions that
No,
are the
shouldn't.
builders are. No.
Unless you have a builder that goes in there and buys 5 or 10 lots,
Yeah.
which typically a developer's not going to allow that few lots to go.
Right.
And then they have problems. But most larger builders, like you say, they get in and out pretty quick. So the idea was for direction, so what I'm hearing from y'all is that the direction we're in is good. Proceed with this, bring it back to you in the form of the ordinance, and go from there. And just a little heads up, we found out from the city attorneys that the legislature passed a law where we can no longer charge for building permits based upon the value of the project, and this is for residential. And so we're also in the process, Rick did a very good job of looking at that and converting everything to where instead of looking at a value for the total project, we're looking at a permit fee based upon square foot of the proposed house. And we're trying to make that come out about equal of what the permit fee is now. So Rick's working on that, and we'll make that part of once, and that's effective immediately. So we've had to come up with a special form where people have an option of waiting until we get the new system done, or go ahead and accept the way we've been doing it to get their permit now. And so we should be bringing that revision to the fee schedule back to you all fairly quickly. Ricky, got anything to add to that?
Let me ask you, can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
So this is across the board, square footage, you're just gonna use square footage as the base
Yeah, because we
price?
can't use value of the property.
It's gonna cost us out the bazoo.
No, we're making it to where it's gonna be about the same. We'll explain it when we bring it back to you.
You can do that with just square footage? That's
You have to
pretty
work,
good.
you have to work backwards.
Yeah. It's
And
gonna
once you work
accomplish the
back-
same thing, it's just,
And Excel does.
it's
did a
really
lot of the
crazy.
correct-
We didn't know this bill was in the legislature.
thinking?
Because building 4 decades ago, every job I did where we had a building permit required, it was based upon the value of the project. So some guy up there in the legislature decided that wasn't right, and
And they didn't give a hint on what they thought would be right?
no, they just made it effective immediately. And the governor's already signed that one. Anyway, that's just a little heads up of more stuff that'll be coming your way. Okay, so we have our direction on that, and we appreciate the comments, and we'll try and bring that back to you hopefully next meeting, or at the latest, the following meeting after that. And by golly, that finishes our agenda. So if there are no objections, we will adjourn. Any objections? None being heard. We're adjourned, and it is
We have a.
8:01.